dear students. Now we'll continue about solving trigonometric equations. To solve a trigonometric equation, we have to revise something which we have to be always committed to, the curves and the shape of the curves. Last video, I explained the sine curve and the cosine curve and the tan curve. The sine curve, it will give you a rule about this horizontal line. It gives you a rule that sine an acute angle is the same like sine another angle which is obtuse, and supplement 180 minus this acute. Sine an acute angle, it has the same value like its supplement. Cosine curve, the shape of the curve means that cosine an angle, which is an acute angle, has the same value like cosine 360 minus this acute. It will be an acute angle, and her twin is a reflex angle over there. Here is a horizontal line. It hits the curve at an acute angle, and 360 minus this acute. The tan curve, it has tan, the acute angle, has the same value as tan 180 plus this acute. So we have here three relations in three rules. How to know them? I need to consolidate this idea through explaining the four quadrants. The first quadrant for acute angles, the second quadrant for obtuse angles, the third for angles between 180 and 270, which is reflex, and the fourth between 270 and 360, which is also reflex. What are these letters? A, S, T, C. I think you understand. S means sine. Yes, correct. T is tan, and C for cosine. What about all? A for all. All functions are positive in the first quadrant. Only sine is positive in the second quadrant. Only tan is positive in the third quadrant. Only cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. So how to remember this word? ASTC, it's not a word. It's shortcuts for all, sine, tan, cosine. Some people say all silver tea cups, just to remind the students. All silver tea cups. But I prefer saying astic, ASTC, astic. It's easy. We need to hold the calculator now and check some acute angles and some obtuse angles, and some reflex between 180 and 270, and some reflex between 270 and 360. Let's go. I don't want to know the value. I just need to know the sign. Okay? Now, sine 30 is positive half. Tan 30 is positive root 3 over 3. Cosine 30 is positive root 3 over 2. So all functions are positive in the first quadrant. Yes. What about the sine? Sine 120 is positive root 3 over 2. Tan 120 is negative square root of 3. And cosine 120 is negative half. It means this is the house of the sine. Only sine is positive in the second quadrant. Okay, let's now try angles which are between 180 and 270. In order to compare, you have to fix a factor, which is the value of the angle. Okay, now sine 2 to 5. Sine 2 to 5, it will be negative root 2 over 2. What about tan? Tan 2 to 5 is positive 1. What about cosine? Cosine 2 to 5 is negative root 2 over 2. So only tan is positive in the third quadrant. Now angles from 270 to 360, let's take a sample like 300. Sine 300 is negative root 3 over 2. Tan 300 is negative square root of 3. But cosine 300, sure, it's positive. Yes, it's positive half. So let's consolidate this idea that all functions are positive in the first quadrant. Only sine is positive in the second quadrant. Only tan is positive in the third quadrant and only cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. Now we need also to use some relations. If we name the angle theta in the first quadrant, any angle in the second quadrant, we will name it 180 minus theta. Again, if we name an angle theta in the first quadrant, in the second quadrant, we have to name it 180 minus theta. You'll know why when we start solving trigonometric equations. And in the third quadrant, it should be 180 plus theta. What is theta? The acute angle. In the fourth quadrant, we will name it 360 minus theta. So let's remind you. First quadrant, all of them are acute angles. In the second quadrant, it should be any angle, 180 minus an acute angle. You have to try to find an acute angle related to the obtuse angle. In the third quadrant, you will find an angle like, for example, 225. You call it 180 plus 45 because it's related to an acute angle. 360 minus the acute angle in the fourth quadrant. It means if you want to speak about a 300 degrees, you call it 360 minus 60. Okay, I'll write these examples now just to remind you. If this angle here is 30 or 45 or 6. In the second quadrant, if this angle is 150, you don't call it 150, you call it 180 minus an acute angle, which is 30. If the angle is 135, you have to rename it 180 minus 45. 180 minus an acute. If this angle is 120 degrees, you rename it 180 minus 60. Why? Because it should be related to an acute angle. The third quadrant. Let's consider angle which is 210. 210, it should be renamed as 180 plus an acute, which is 30 degrees. What about 225? I said it before. 225, it should be 180 plus an acute, which is 45. Okay, what about 240 degrees? 240 is related to an acute angle. Rename it 180 plus 60. Okay, now I need three angles. Did you recognize I'm speaking about famous angles? Yes. 30 degrees is famous, 45 is famous, and 60 degrees is famous. And the trigonometric ratios are, we nearly, all of us, we will memorize them. If you make a lot of practice, you will memorize them. So now about the angle, which is 330. Rename it 360 minus an acute. 30. 360 minus 30. What about 315? Rename it 360 minus an acute, which is 45. What about 300? 300 degrees, it is rename it 360 minus 60. So we are handling all other angle in each quadrant, you handle it related to an acute angle. You will understand more when we practice solving trigonometric equations. You will find it the simplest ever. Some people think that solving trigonometric equations is hard, but believe me, I'll make it so simple. You'll see. Solving trigonometric equations, he will give you a domain which is between 0 and 360, and the question is solve. What's the meaning of solve? Find the value of x. What's x here? It's an angle. Solve the following trigonometric equations where x lies between 0 and 360 inclusive. Now, this is a riddle. If sine x is 0.866, how to know the values of x? In all questions, you have to do something very important is drawing your asterisk. In this question, I'll draw asterisk and this question also. Just to remind me in which diagram we are, in which quadrant we are. If the sign is positive, here you should write, of course, ASTC, asterisk. Sign is positive in two quadrants. What are they? In the all quadrant and in the sign quadrant. I can call it the house of all or the house of the family, and the other house is the house of sign. So first of all, you have to use your calculator. Find an acute angle. What shall we name it? Name it acute. The acute angle is the angle whose sine inverse is 0.866. Calculators. Shift sine 0.866. It will be 59.997, as I told you, rounded to one decimal place. So it will be 60.0. Take care. If you don't write this 0, 1 mark will be cut because it was infinite on the display. If the angle is not exact, you have to round it to one decimal place. So 60.0 is rounded to one decimal place. Now, you have got the acute angle, which is one of the solutions. What about x? X will be the acute angle that you got. Remember, it is one decimal place, or 180 minus this acute, 180 minus this acute, 180 minus answer equals, you will find that 120.0. Remember the 0, and here are your two answers, and you achieved the full mark. Ta-da! Remember, if you are in this quadrant, you take theta. This quadrant is 180 minus theta. I mean 180 minus the acute. Let's revise the angles and the relation I wrote in red. In the first quadrant, all angles are acute. In the second quadrant, 180 minus this acute, then the third, 180 plus this acute. In the fourth, 360 minus this acute. Okay, let's recite. Acute, 180 minus this acute, 180 plus this acute, 360 minus this acute, acute, 180 minus this acute, 180 plus this acute, 360 minus this acute. Let's go to solving the second trigonometric equation. What about the 7? You remember before that we have to clear the equation. We have to clear it, to clear the x. Okay, so divide both sides by 7. Okay, cut. This means that sine x is negative 3 over 7. Da-da-da! Asterisk. ASTC. Sine is negative in which quadrant? Not in the all quadrant and not in the sign, in the house of the sign. In the other two. The other two, how to name them? 180 plus this acute, 360 minus this acute. So we need to find the acute. Ignore the negative sign temporarily. All of you say it. Ignore the negative sign temporarily. To find the acute angle, it is the angle whose sine inverse 3 over 7. If you click, suppose that you forgot, and you click shift sine negative 3 over 7, you will find that the angle is negative. But I promised you, you don't have negative angles in the previous video. Negative angles only for AS and A level. But for IGCSE, you ignore the negative sign, please. If the input is wrong, the output is also wrong. When you ignore the negative sign, shift sign 3 over 7, it will give you directly an acute angle, which is 25.4. This is one decimal place. Okay? And then you need to find x, not the acute. X values here are both of them reflex. One of them 180 plus this acute, or the other value of x is 360 minus this acute. I can use the button answer only once because I'll use it. I cannot use it again unless you store it, because I said before that you have 9 stores on the calculator in a previous video. So this angle will be 205.4. Okay, and then 360 minus 25.4 is 334.6 degrees. Da-da-da. Now you have two values. One of them reflex. Yes, the other one is also reflex. How to check my work? 3/7 in decimals will be 0, negative 0.429. 429. I need to check whether I got a correct answer or not. How to do it? Now check. Sine 205.4 equals negative 0.529. Wow! And another check. Sine 334.6 equals negative 0.429. Yes, you have to check that it's also negative. Concentrate the same answer and the same sign. Next, Sol. What's the meaning of Sol? Find the value of x, and x here is an angle. How to get rid of 2? Divide both sides by 2. That cut. It means cosine x is positive square root of 3/2. It's one of the famous angles. ASTC. Where is cosine negative? In the house of the family. All functions are positive in the first quadrant. Only cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. Remember, in this quadrant, the angles are acute. In the fourth quadrant, it is 360 minus this acute. So we need to find the acute angle first. Remember, I have a system. First of all, I find the acute angle. I don't rename it anything. Okay? Shift cosine square root of 3/2. Wow, it's a famous angle. It's 30. Good. And now you need to find x. Take care of your titles. One title is acute angle, and then we decide, shall we deal with the same 30? Yes, because in the first quadrant, the angle is already acute. Okay? Or another value, which is x equals 360 minus this acute, 360 minus this acute. It will be 330. Da-da-da. We find two answers, because usually on the answer line, you will find two answer lines for trigonometric equations. How to check my work? Cosine 30 equals, yes, √3/2. Cosine 330. Yes, it's positive also 300, positive √3/2. Now let's solve this equation. First of all, we didn't take algebra till now, but we will. Cross the bridge and change the sign. 6 cosine x equals 5 plus 1 equals 6. Divide both sides by 6. In solving equations, this is the best thing to say the word both sides. You should be fair for the right-hand side and the left-hand side. So now cosine x will be 1. It's not a quadrantial angle. You will not use ASTC, but you will sketch the curve like that. The curve, you sketch it in a second. Okay, here is x in degrees, here is cosine x. Remember that the curve, how does it look like? Half a cup above x-axis, 1 full cup below x-axis, then half a cup above x-axis. And the maximum value is 1 and the minimum value is -1. And there are two values. Their cosines are 1, 0, and 360. You will know it from the shape of the curve. As I told you, your calculator only is programmed on the acute angles. But he can give you, yes, shift cosine. Click shift cosine. 1 equals, he will give you the 0. But who knows the 360? Please, if you sketch the curve, you will know the other value. Also, you will find on the answer line 2 spaces. So you'll write x is equal to 0 degrees or 360 degrees. And we got the 2 answers. As I told you, these are neither acute nor obtuse nor reflex. They are quadrantial. Quadrantial means on the borders of the quadrant. Question number 5. Now, -9 plus 310x equals 12. You need to be strong in algebra because algebra is the skeleton of math. Okay, how to clear x from all these numbers around it. First of all, cross the bridge and change the sign. 310x goes down, equal sign goes down, 12 goes down, cross the bridge and change the sign. 12 plus 9 is how much? 21. Remember, in algebra, don't solve it horizontally. Solve equations vertically. I want to hear you saying the word goes down. So now 310x goes down. Equal sign goes down. 21 goes down. How to get rid of the 3? Say it's multiplied. So divide both sides by 3. Now 10x equals 7. Oh, a big value. Take care, it's not sine, it's not cosine. Sine and cosine, the greatest value ever is 1. And the least value ever is -1. But tan curve, remember, there is an asymptote. It goes up to infinity. As usual, we have to think about something. This 7 is positive, yes? So, asterisk. Where is the tan positive? The tan is positive in 2 houses. The house of the family and the house of the tan. Okay, where is the tan positive? Remember, all functions are positive in the first quadrant. Only tan is positive in the third quadrant. Rename them. Angle here is theta, which is acute, and here 180 plus this acute, 180 plus this acute. So use your calculator. Shift tan 7 equals, the angle is acute as we expected. So what is the title? Who will tell me? You. The acute angle, don't name it x. First you find the acute. The acute angle is the angle whose tan is 7, which is 81.9 degrees. Okay, we got the acute angle. By coincidence, it is the same answer as theta, but we name it here x because the equation is find the value of x. So x, one of the values is the same 81.9, or the other value will be 180 plus, which button shall we use? Answer, ANS. 180 plus answer equals 81.9 equals 261.9. Da-da-da. Now we found out the 2 solutions. How to check our work? We need to challenge. Now, 10, 81.9 equals 7.02 something. Remember that you rounded up the angle, but it's 7, positive 7. And 10, 261.9 equals the same, 7.02 something. It is positive. Some students believe in substituting in the original equation. I believe this is the best. Okay, let's try. Challenge. -9 plus 3, 10 81.9 equals, it should be 12. Yes. And make the same check for the other reflex angle to 61.9. Just substitute here, write negative 9 plus 3, 10 to 61.9. I bet you it will be 12. Now the last equation. I miss you. Now 210x equals negative square root of 2. First of all, who knows? Because 2 is multiplied by 10, how to get rid of the 2? By division. Divide both sides by 10. Cut, cut. Here is 10x equals negative square root 2 over 2. ASTC. ASTC is a must. You must do it in all trigonometric equations. Now, your 10 is negative. 10 is negative not in the house of the family of all. It's not negative in the house of the 10. So, where is it negative? In the other two quadrants, which is 180 minus this acute and 360 minus this acute. How to find the acute? Who knows? Ignore the negative sign, please. So if you need to find the acute angle, you will click inverse tan root 2 over 2. It's a famous angle. Shift 10 root 2. No, it's not that famous. Over 2. It's not famous. It is an acute angle which is 35.3, rounded to 1 decimal place. When you find the acute angle, don't name it x, you just name it acute. Now, when you start to find the angle in the third, second quadrant and the fourth, now you rename it x. X equals 180 minus this acute. Remember, it's on the display. Click 180 minus answer equals. It will be 144.7. Okay? Or the other one, 360 minus this acute. Name it x. Titles are very important. Or accuracy. X equals 360 minus this acute. Where is the acute? This one. 360 minus 35.3 equals 324.7. Let's check our work. We have to know square root of 2 is how much. Square root of 2 is how much in decimals? It is 1.414. It means my check will be 2 tan 144.7. It should be approximately negative 1.41. Let's do it. Check in the original equation. This is the best. 2 tan 144.7 equals negative 1.416. It's okay because we rounded up the angle. And the other one, 2 tan 324.7. It should be negative 1.41 something. Yes. Now I checked and we found everything was perfect. Thank you. And see you on the next video. Bye bye.